Hey, thanks for watching. Today we're going to remove the rear wheel off of a KTM RC8, and we're going to mount and balance a new tire and put the rear wheel back on. This might be one of the coolest bikes on the planet. There weren't a whole lot of them made, and I'm fortunate that I've gotten to touch this one a few times. So I figured I would do a video just to help any of you folks that happen to get a hold of a second-hand one. This one was purchased new. The owner's had it since new. He's taking pretty good care of it. So first thing we did was we loosened the axle nut on the right hand side of the bike. Once that's off, we push the axle through. I use my foot to relieve the pressure off of the rear wheel on the axle, and it allows that axle to slide out a little bit easier. Once the axle's out, push the rear wheel forward, grab a hold of the chain, pull the chain off the sprocket, and just let it hang off the swing arm. And then the RC8 is a little bit more unique with the way the carrier is for the rear caliper. So the carrier is actually fixed to the swing arm, but don't worry, you can get the wheel past the caliper without scratching the wheel or having to take off the caliper. But you do have to be very careful. So when you slide that carrier for the caliper all the way back, it gives you a little bit more room to play with. But like I said, you got to be very careful with this, because if you drop that wheel into that caliper, you're going to put a nick into the paint, and nobody wants to see that in their wheel. And I like to treat other people's bikes like they're my own, and I know I don't want scratched up wheels on my bike, so I don't want to be the guy that scratches up some other guy's bike. Especially on this bike. This is kind of a special bike. Kind of like the owner. The owner's very special. I hope he watches this. He is special. So the rear wheel's off, and let me show you what I'm talking about, how it's mounted. So see, there's a Torx head bolt that bolts that carrier right to the swing arm, and then it just slides. That carrier just slides on that. So we're going to move the spacer off the right side, and then we're going to remove the sprocket carrier off the left side. And you see how hard it's coming out? So we're going to hit that a little bit later in this video. We're going to hit that sprocket carrier with some steel wool and clean it up so it'll slide in and out of the wheel. So here we are. I'm on my Derek Weaver tire machine. If you like the fact that I show you how to mount and balance tires, post that in the comments, and I'll start doing that with more bikes. I typically do run video while I'm changing the tires on most bikes, just for proof that I'm not the guy that screwed up their wheel. This tire machine that I am using is the Derek Weaver machine. You can go to derekweaver.com and see this machine and see how much it costs. It's not real expensive. I will tell you that if you buy it from Derek Weaver, you're going to save yourself about $2,000 over buying the same exact machine that they call a Coates Baseline. So my other tire machine is a Coates machine. And when I was looking to buy a new tire machine, I was looking at the Coates Baseline, and I was able to get this machine at such a huge savings that it was kind of a no-brainer to me. And then when I need parts like those nylon rim clamps, I can just buy the same rim clamps as what the Coates machine has, And because the Coates machine has the same thing, those rim clamps are actually a little bit cheaper. And those nylon rim clamps really protect the wheel when the machine just won't grab a hold of the wheel like it's doing right now. So there's never going to be a time when my machine is going to scratch a wheel. If you look at the arm, I have a nylon duck head on the mount and dismount arm, and the nearest thing that could hurt the wheel is this steel pry bar. But as long as the user keeps the steel pry bar on the nylon duck head, there's really no way that it's going to scratch the wheel or come in contact with the wheel if you pay attention to what you're doing. Problem is, most guys in a motorcycle shop are the lowest paid employees, the ones doing the tire changing, and they could really care less about your wheels. Doesn't matter what bike you have, whether you're on KTM, Ducati, MV Agusta, that guy making $10 an hour could care less about your wheel. If he messes it up and you complain, the dealership, they have insurance to replace your wheel. He might lose his job, but there's another motorcycle shop right down the road that's going to hire him. So there's the wheel off. We're going to put a new Bridgestone S22 on, and what I'm showing you in this is there's an arrow on the tire and there's a yellow dot. Not all tires have that yellow dot, but that yellow dot matches up with your valve stem, and then that arrow needs to go in the direction of your wheel, the way your wheel spins. So very important, if you're going to get caught in a rainstorm, you definitely want your tire to be put on the correct direction to wick the water away from your bike so you have traction while in the rain. So now we're just pushing the tire onto the wheel. That's the easy bead. The first side's easy to get on, and then we'll let the tire machine put this side on. If you look in the back right corner, you can see an arm hanging off my machine, and that arm is for doing like Gold Wings and Harleys with the harder, stiffer sidewalls. It'll actually push the bead down into the wheel and allow the tire machine to remove the tire or install the tire a lot easier. Well, then we hook up our air and we seat the bead. Once the tire's popped twice, then we're going to put a new Schrader valve in. Every tire change, your wheels should get a new Schrader valve. Something else a lot of shops won't do, they won't spend that extra 10 cents on new Schrader valves. They'll just reuse the old one. That is a bad way to treat the customers. I will not be doing that ever. And once the Schrader valve's in, we're going to go ahead and air up the tire to the amount of air pressure which KTM says that their bike needs. I do live in Dragon Slayer country, and a bunch of Dragon Slayers will always say, oh, you only need 28, 32 PSI. Well, you know what? The manufacturer puts a sticker on the bike for a reason, and they do tire testing for a reason. So don't underinflate your tire. All you're doing is wearing out the tire faster. Just because the tire's hotter doesn't mean the tire is going to be stickier. And it could actually throw you on your butt in a turn quicker. It could make the tire actually a little bit slimier than what it really should be. So think about these things when you start putting air pressure into your tires. And as you see, the yellow dot is matched up with the valve stem. Now we're going to move over to my tire balancer. My tire balancer also is a Derek Weaver. This machine, if you go to the DerekWeaver.com website, this machine is the largest computer balancer that Derek Weaver sells. It's been pretty good to me. It does all right. When I uncrated this machine, I did have a problem with the LEDs. One of my LEDs doesn't light up. It does come with the 2-year warranty, and I did contact Derek Weaver, and they wanted me to jump through a whole bunch of hoops, and I disconnected cables and reconnected cables, and then I just gave up. You know, it's one little section of LED that doesn't work. So I didn't replace the LED on the panel or replace the panel. I just let it be. I figure in a few more years I'll be buying another tire changer. I go through enough tires. All the money that I make changing tires, because I am not a business, goes back into changing tires. I change tires to help riders out, not to make a profit. That's why I can get away with charging $20 for a mount and balance, where most dealerships nowadays typically get $100 per wheel for a mount and balance. It's not fair, but you know, they have overhead. They have to pay their employees. They have to keep the lights on. They have to insure their employees. They have to insure the shop. They have to pay rent. I don't have any of that. So I figured $20 a wheel. I do a few hundred wheels every year. So all that money just goes into a pot. When I want a new tool, I go buy a new tool, and the money's there. So if I want to spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a new computer balancer, I've got the money for the computer balancer. If I want to buy a new tire machine, I can go buy a new tire machine. So I put the wheel on the balancer. I didn't take the wheel weights off. Sometimes I get lucky and the wheel weights that are on the wheel will be the same for the new tire. I didn't get so lucky this time, so now I'm just peeling off the old wheel weights. And I'll spin it again once I get these wheel weights off. I will straight up tell you, if you're at a dealership or you're taking your wheels into Cycle Gear to get your tires put on, don't get mad at your tire installer. At $20 a wheel or even $100 a wheel, nobody's going to clean the tape off your wheel. No one's cleaning your wheel. If they do, that's an exceptional shop. I'm here to tell you, at $20 a wheel, I'm not cleaning your wheel. I'm going to clean a small section where I'm going to stick the new weights on. I'm not cleaning your wheel. So you can ask me to clean your wheel, but I'm not cleaning your wheel. So this wheel had a bunch of weights on it. I don't know if you paid attention when I was pulling the wheel off the bike. It had well over 2 ounces of weight on the wheel. That's quite a bit. Usually if I have a wheel that calls for 2 ounces, I'll go ahead and I'll take the tire back off the wheel and spin it about 180 degrees and then remount it. I really need to buy some pants that stay up. I've lost some weight. My pants fall off me now. I have to drop a size so my plumber's butt doesn't show anymore. That looks terrible in this video. I know you guys are looking at it going, "Oh, pull your damn pants up, dude." So I'm sitting here working, trying to get as much of the weights, get all the weights and as much of the tape off as I can. So it looks pretty good. We're going to spin it. I like how they put those yellow and white lines on the tire. It makes it look like my tire machine's kind of wobbly. So where the wheel weight needed to go was right where one of my arms are, my clamp arms. So I went ahead and just moved the wheel around so when it lands again, I don't have to fight with cleaning the wheel where the clamp arm is. It gives me a little bit more room to work. Which, if I remember doing this bike correctly, I want to say that it landed like almost where the last weights came off. And I can't exactly see how much weight it's taking from here, but it shouldn't be more than 1.25 ounces, I would guess. But once I get my wheel weights cut, the wheel weights come in a strip. So I cut them, and then I have greased lightning on a shop towel. And if you've ever used greased lightning, you know that greased lightning will take off any of that chain wax, the chain lube. It'll take it right off the wheel. It does a nice job of removing any kind of adhesives and oily residue that might be on your wheel. And it'll allow these wheel weights to stick on the wheel and not come off when you're parked in your garage. So we're going to spin it. This one is just proof that it's going to land on 0. So there we go. There's what all zeros looks like. That's what your wheel should look like once it's balanced. So as I was taking the wheel off, I was telling you we need to clean these up. So usually I'll take like steel wool. These weren't too bad, so I went ahead and just shot them with WD-40 and then just wiped them off. And we just want to get those little shafts clean so it just drops right into the wheel. So that went into the wheel a lot easier than it came out. And while I was at it, I went ahead and cleaned up the spacer where the spacer goes into the sprocket. And I'm putting a light coat of grease on the axle. And as I showed you when I started this, I'm using Lubrimatic marine grease. So why marine grease? Well, you don't need high performance grease on your axles, right? Because your wheel is not turning on the axle, your wheel is turning on the bearing. We're using marine grease because we want to protect the axle, we want to protect the seals, we want to protect the inner bearings from dirt, debris, water, any other crap that might get in while we're riding down the road. So marine grease is good enough for protecting your boat trailer axles and your boat trailer bearings going in and out of salt water. So you know it's going to be great for your motorcycle. So keep that in mind. Any lube will do, but marine grease will give you the best protection from the elements when you're putting your axles together. Really anything that you're going to be greasing, your steering stem bearings, marine grease, your swing arm, marine grease. There's no need to be putting high performance grease on your motorcycle anywhere that there's a bearing, because most motorcycles have sealed bearings and there's already a high performance grease inside that sealed bearing. So you see me carefully sliding that wheel into the swing arm so I don't hit the caliper on the wheel. That's the worst thing ever, if you scratch a wheel when you're installing or dismounting the wheel from the bike. And once we get it all lined up with the caliper side, then we come back and we put our chain on the sprocket. And with the chain on the sprocket, we're going to line up the axle. The KTM axle is kind of unique It has a spacers on one end. It has a spacer that's fixed to the axle, and you can actually flip it around if your chain is like too long or too short. You can flip it around, and it's the equivalent of like adding or taking away a link off the chain. So it's kind of nice there. However, this bike makes so much torque that this chain's going to be long worn out before you need to be shortening it or you know, taking a link out because you've stretched the chain. This bike, like most twins, just puts so much torque. I shouldn't say most twins, because a Harley is never ever going to put down a lot of torque. But anyway, it's going to put down so much torque to the pavement that it really stretches out a chain. So back on the other side, we're putting that spacer in. We're putting our axle nut back on. And we're just about done with this job. So with our axle nut in place, we're going to put our socket on our torque wrench, and we're going to torque down our axle nut. I don't give torque specs in my videos. You can go online and search it yourself, and it's also in your owner's manual or your shop manual. So don't complain to me that I didn't give you torque specs, because it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. So once we've got it torqued down, that's it. Just spin the wheel and pump the brakes, and you're good to go.